Hey, this is Colton Dixon, and you're listening to Dispatch Radio.
I have a great guest. We're going to talk about a great book they have coming out called The Legend of George Jones. We have Charlene and Earl, nicknamed Peanut Montgomery, with us. How are you folks?
We're doing fine. How about you?
Oh, we're so blessed. Thank you so much for fitting us into your schedule. And I want to get right to the book so folks can kind of understand a little bit about it. It's described as a tell-all book about setting the record straight. Tell people a little bit about what they can expect in this book and why you guys put that together.
Well, I started writing the book maybe 5-6 years ago, and I was enticed to write the book because I wanted the people that knew George Jones, loved George Jones, to know the real George Jones. There's been a lot of publicity and books written and tabloid magazines, things that kind of painted a picture of him just being this bad guy, but we knew him personally for many, many, many years and was as close to him as a brother and sister, and we wanted people to know the real side of George Jones, the good side of George Jones. There was a lot of good men in George Jones that people don't know about. And, you know, tabloids and stuff don't write about good things people do. They always hit on the bad stuff. As the old saying goes, bad news travels fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I wanted them to know the good things and the good side of George, things he did that were never told. And I felt the public and people that loved him needed to know the other side. So I wrote the book. And it tells a lot of things about his personal life, his personal feelings, and the person he really was, you know. So there's some exciting stories in the book that tells of things he did, and not denying the fact that he was addicted to alcohol and drugs. You know, that's in there as well, but it kind of explains some of the reasons why he was such a drinker and why he became addicted to drugs. So I think people will enjoy the book and the stories it's told, and it tells about the different wives that he had, which was 5, and tells a story about each one of those. I knew them all, and I think that people need to know more about George Jones and what they have been told.
What was the relationship between you and Peanut and George? Some folks may not know and quite understand what the relationship is, because you guys have a long, long history together.
Well, George was just like a brother to us, I guess closer than a brother, because we spent more time with him than we did with our actual relatives, you know. And George was, he did duets with Peanut's sister, Melba Montgomery, and they had several big records together, and Peanut, of course, wrote songs for Melba Montgomery, which is his sister, and then duets for George and Melba and George and Tammy, and he wrote singles for George, and we were just with him all the time and wrote lots of songs together, and through all the connection, we became very, very close. And, I mean, during his hard times, we were right there by his side to help him, encourage him, and try to keep his career going, you know, and keep him alive, mainly. But our friendship was as close as any friendship could be. We were committed and loyal to each other, all of us, all 3 of us. And George married my sister, and they were married for 7 years. And so there he became a family member. But we were just, you know, dedicated. We were close. Peanut, I'll let you tell a little bit how you feel about the relationship.
Well, I met George around 1962 when I began to write for him, and I was writing for Melba, and I was under contract at Surefire Music, which was owned by the Wilburn brothers, Ted and Doyle, the Wilburn brothers. They were an act on the Grand Ole Opry. And so I began to have songs recorded by quite a few different people, and so when I began to write for George, Pappy Daly, the producer, with George at United Artists at the time, asked me if I would sign with his company, which was Glad Music in Houston, Texas. So I told him I was still under contract at the time for about another, maybe a year. And so he made a deal with the Wilburns, and I think he purchased my remainder of the contract, and I signed with Glad Music, and so that began my career actually with George Jones, writing for him, and the company that UA, United Artists, and then later Pappy Daly started with Art Talmadge and Gene Pitney, the pop singer. They started a company called Music Corps. And then I began to write for the artist on that label also. So it just branched in and umbrellaed out to other people and other companies. And so I had I wound up writing and co-writing 73 songs for George Jones over about 22, 24 years.
Yeah, when George married Tammy, too, George wanted him to sign with Altown Music, which is a company owned by Tammy Wynette, now Gallico. So it seemed like when George made a move, we made a move. So he signed with Altown, which was Tammy's company, and of course we were with George and Tammy the entire length of their marriage and toured with them and wrote with them and wrote a lot of songs during that time. We would come in off the road with them and get on the houseboat and write songs, or be out in the car riding around looking at property, and first thing we knew, one of us would say something that would be considered an idea for a song, and we'd just write it, you know. So we spent just hour on top of hour with them, writing and just doing fun things, you know. And so Peanut moved, when George moved to a company and changed companies, well, it meant that there was a publishing company involved, and George would want Peanut to leave the company he was with and go wherever he was, so they could write together and wouldn't have to split royalties and stuff, you know. So just a lot of work, a lot of fun, a lot of time spent together, you know. And through that, I just felt like it needed to be. I wanted to set the record straight on a lot of stuff that was said and done during those years, and in the book, I tell how things came about and, you know, why they came about.
Well, there's always good and bad, right? And I think that's what you're saying. You're trying to touch on some of the positives that have been left out of the negative stories. We've all seen some of the dirty laundry in the magazines and newspapers and that kind of thing. And give me a little bit of an insight on Tammy and George together, because it's kind of like one of those iconic couple relationships that'll probably be remembered in history. And, you know, as much as everyone wants to focus on sort of their breakup and the negative side of that, touch a little bit about the magic of when the two of them were together.
Well, George and Tammy were like two kids. They were both legends, and they were both independent of each other, and I think they both really did love each other. In fact, there was absolutely no reason they should have divorced. George's drinking played a big factor in their divorce, but it wasn't just that. It was little things that they would get into over. It would be things like who got the biggest royalty check, you know. It would intimidate the other one if one of them's check was bigger than the other. Just little things that didn't amount to anything, you know. And they would, of course, you know, have a problem over it, and they would bicker back and forth. And I know one time George went and thought he was doing Tammy a favor, and she had a new Eldorado, and she loved it. She and I went to town and come back. Georgia traded her Eldorado off and bought her a new town car. And she was just totally upset over it. She couldn't let on because she knew that it would hurt George's feelings and it would be a reason for him to go get drunk. So she couldn't say anything, but she literally hated the new car he bought her over the car that she had. It was just things like that they would get into it over. And I think there at the end, Tammy had some encouragement from other people around her to not put up with George anymore, and it just finally came to a divorce.
Yeah, so we're talking to Charlene and Peanutt Montgomery about their new book, The Legend of George Jones, and I'd be remiss if I didn't at least get Peanut to explain the story, because if you read some of the press, folks, you'll hear, you know, attempted murder of Peanut by George, but George he's a little crazy sometimes, so there was a really kind of an interesting story that happened where George kind of shot at Peanut. So if Peanut could speak to that a little bit, that I think listeners would really enjoy that.
Well, in 1976, I was saved in the church and had turned more to the ministry and began to study the Bible and go to church, and I began to not go to nightclubs. And see, I was a Jones boy at the time, and I was playing guitar, rhythm guitar for Tammy and George, but they had divorced, and so we progressed into the church in 1976. So when I was saved through the church, I began to stay out of the nightclubs with him, and he would want me to go to Vegas and do Vegas and go on the road and play some in the clubs, and I didn't want to do that because I began to study the ministry and doing, and I was preaching at the time on the radio and like 5 days a week, and so I was staying busy in the ministry. And he would call my house and he would ask Charlene, "Where's little Jesus at?" And what it was, we loved each other. He would tell me he loved me like a brother. He said, "Peanut, we're brothers, and we love each other," and all of that. And he said he wanted me to go on the road and be with him and stuff. So he got jealous of Jesus, actually, as the psychology that I drew from that. And I would talk to him and try to get him to get in the church and be saved and turn to Jesus more than just talking about him. He would inquire about him, and he would ask a lot of questions, why there were crippled children, and he couldn't stand to see little kids crippled and older people dying, and he'd say, why would God, if there's a God, why would he do that? So I would try my best to explain and be nice about it and tell him that God loved him and that he loved the people, but we didn't know what God did all the time. And I said, God is above everything. He's the creator, and what he does is always right. And so one night he told me to meet him down at Cypress Creek, which is close to the Tennessee River, that ran in the river there, and I met him down there, and we were talking, but he was in one car and I was in another one, and it was warm weather, and I had the window down, he had the window down, and we were talking, and he was probably 12, 15 feet from me, and I had my hands out, folded, with my arms out, hanging out of the car, and he just out with his .38 pistol and shot at me. Said, I'm going to see if your God can save you now. And then he shot, and he missed me probably about 2 inches. And the bullet landed in the door of the car. And so I heard it was at night, and I heard the hammer back. He was pulling the hammer back on the pistol again, and I thought he was going to shoot at me again. But I had a peace to come into me at the time, and I know it was the Lord and with his the spirit and protection that God gave me. And he threw the pistol back over his shoulder in the car, and he said, people don't know what I go through with. He said, I have so much trouble and all of that. And I said, well, George, why do you pick at me all the time? And he would call Charlene, and he would say, I'm going to come over there, and I'm going to pull his beard out. I had a beard at the time. He said, I'm going to pluck his beard out like they did Jesus. And he would do things like that, and sometimes I would come home, and there would be a six-pack of beer on the steps of the house and a pack of cigarettes. I'd quit smoking and drinking. And Charlene asked him one day, said, George, why did you want to pick at Peanut and leave that beer and cigarettes on the doorsteps for? He said, well, they know him here. And he said he's known in his hometown here. And he said, he might want a beer and he might want a cigarette. He don't want to go down and buy those. And he said they would recognize him. So I just thought I'd do him a favor. And so, but when he shot at me, in a little bit, he talked on with me. And then he said, well, just like nothing had happened. He said, okay, Peanut, I'm going to the house.
Wow.
He just drove off. And then I went up to the police station and told them that he had shot at me, and so they took a warrant out for him, and they arrested him, And we had a court, and I took him up to the bench. I told the lawyers, the prosecutor was a good friend of mine, and the DA, and I told him, I said, I want to bring George to his senses. And I said, I want to scare him into thinking that he might go to the pen, and I might get him off his drugs and his drinking so bad. And so when I got up to the bench, I told him to drop it on him. That he came in and said, oh, okay, and he threw his hands up and he said, okay, I'm guilty, I did it, I'm sorry I shot him, my friend. And I told him to just drop it. I said, they said, he'll be sent off for 15 years for attempted murder. And I said, I don't want to do that. I said, I want to help him. I love him, don't want to send him off. So that's what happened.
People ask me how could I still care about George after he attempted to kill my husband. Well, the thing is, that happened during the time that George was really addicted to cocaine and drinking heavy and had gone through that divorce with Tammy, and he was a very lonely person at the time, and he felt that Peter and I had turned our back on him, and it really bothered him. I mean, it bothered him to that point of doing what he did. And so I knew that it wasn't the George Jones that we knew and loved and cared about. It was the cocaine that had got him all messed up and off track, and he wouldn't have done that for anything in the world had he not been messed up at the time. And this is the one thing that I wanted the book to kind of tell people about George. Yeah, he did a lot of things that was bad, but there was something that caused that. Something had happened in his life that made him turn to doing the things he did. It was his only defense. George wasn't a good person to speak up and speak his mind about things, so he did it in a different way. And what he did, I feel, that night was just try to get Peanut's attention and let Peanut see how bad he felt about Peanut changing his life. He was proud for him as far as becoming a Christian, but he didn't want to sacrifice our friendship because George had depended on us for many, many years to be there when he needed us. And it seemed to him that we was not there anymore, and it really hurt him. And it was just a sad thing that happened, but we were all thankful that it wasn't as bad as it could have been. And I feel like anybody that's messed up like that they need to be forgiven. It needs to be looked over because of the condition he was in at that time. So I couldn't hold it against him.
Well, we're talking about the real heart and soul of George Jones and the legacy, and the good times and the bad are well documented in the new book, The Legend of George Jones by Charlene and Peanutt Montgomery, and we're sharing a few of those stories and kind of understanding a little bit about the demons that George was facing and some of the things that kind of overtook him, and kind of explain some of the behaviors and things like that made the press and people sadly have kind of tarnished his reputation by focusing on those negatives. And the sound of the book is that we want to try to focus on some of those positives. So what's one last thing we can try to squeeze in that you'd love people to know about, his heart and who he really was?
He had a heart of gold. He'd do anything for anybody. He was a common man. He wanted to be recognized as a common man. He told me many times, I never wanted to be a star, never thought I'd be a star. I wanted to keep the guitar and sing to people. And he said, it just turned out that way. He said, it just turned out. And like one time he opened a restaurant when he lived here, and we got a limousine for the grand opening day, and it embarrassed him because he had to ride in the limousine. He didn't like anything that put him up on a pedestal. He liked being a common person. He liked going down to there and playing a game of volleyball with a bunch of just whoever. And they didn't have to be a songwriter or somebody in the music business or somebody famous. He just wanted a bunch of people to get together and have a good time. And he always liked to win now. He wasn't a good loser. And he had sometimes play badly, so I'd tell the gang or his crew, play hard, and I'd tell my bunch, if I was on the opposite team, y'all, don't do so good. Let George win. Let his side win. And then we'll have a good day for the rest of the day. But if you don't, we might not have such a good day.
Yeah, that went for playing rook or Scrabble or something, or what was the other one we played?
Aggravation.
Yeah, aggravations. Yeah, that was the one. It would aggravate him sometimes. And if he didn't win, sometimes he'd turn the table over or throw the board off the table or something. But anyway, that was just George. You know, he wanted to win, but later on, I would like to clear up the fact about after he had shot at me by just out of the clear blue, I guess. I went to a judge one day because I saw him. He was so messed up on cocaine. I went down and asked the judge if he would commit George somewhere, and I thought he was detrimental to himself and other people. I said he's going to hurt someone or hurt himself, and we need to get him some help. And so we committed him to Hillcrest Hospital in Birmingham, Alabama, and he was there 30 days. And the Lord put a guy, an older man, in a place with him there where they were. They were behind. Actually, they were confined, but they could go out and get sunshine and visit out on the guards, but there could be nobody else out there with them. And the old man had a testament, and he followed George around for the 30 days, and he would read Bible stories to him and talk about Jesus to him. And I really think that's when it really turned George's life towards the Lord, and because I heard in his latter years, after he became very ill with his breathing and his, I think he had some form of COPD or something, and he finally took his life. But I think that really got him off of the cocaine, the worst part of it. And before long after that, the song that made him very, very famous was He Stopped Loving Her Today. And so that came out right after that, after he'd been confined. And so I think that helped him get his life together. And I'll always give the Lord credit there for even the song and coming along and letting him have that song over everybody else in the industry and made a superstar out of him. And at the time, he was booking for around $3,000 a night. The next thing I knew, he'd gone on the Johnny Carson show, the Tonight Show, and he missed it the first time, and they finally talked him into going because he didn't want to go on television. He didn't want to do television. Yeah. But they finally talked him into doing it. The second time, they even called and asked if they could get him to come, and he did. And he did. He Stopped Loving Her Today on it, and the next thing I knew, he was getting $30,000 a night, and then he went on to be lots more over that. You know?
I wanted to say too that in the book we've got a 11-song CD, songs that Peanut and George wrote together, Peanut wrote by himself. There's going to be a bonus treat with the book, you know, and on the song A Hard Act to Follow that Peanut wrote was the back side of He Stopped Loving Her Today, and it's also in the CD that comes with the book.
Yeah, 2 of the songs were never released, so folks, it's a great chance to, fill out your George Jones and Peanut Montgomery collection, and what a great story to end with, too. It was, praise God for, touching George's life at the end and turning the career completely upside down, and that's how God works, and it was great to know that backstory to such a popular song and really his legacy and how it really does tie to our Savior. So that's great news and a great stopping point for us. And Charlene and Peanut, I can't thank you enough for your time. I wish you luck with the book. I hope it really does help spread the word of George and can change some lives. People can look at his testimony and his story and see not just the bad side of celebrities, but understand there's a whole big backstory there, and then also know there's also a redemption and a saving moment there that can be great. So.
Yeah, I thought there's a good story in the book about George and Tammy when they lived there down there in Lakeland, Florida, and where they're parked there. I think that was some of the happiest times of their life up until right toward the end before they left there. But George was so excited about his Lakeland, Florida plantation there, that park that he had. That was one of the highlights of his life. He got to do something there that he always wanted to do, and he talked about Lakeland all the time, and he loved it there. And Peanut and I got to visit with him at their plantation park and spent a whole week with him. It tells funny stories in the book about that ordeal. So people down in that area enjoy reading about that.
You guys are gonna have a lot of good laughs and some good stuff in here, folks. So we'll link to a way of getting the book for you, so you can order that, get the CD with it. It's a great deal on that. It's The Legend of George Jones. And Charlene and Earl, thank you again so much, and you guys take care.
I wanted to say one other thing. In the album, there's a new song that Peanut wrote. It's the same title of the book, The Legend of George Jones. It's a brand new song. That's one of them that has never been released, and people will enjoy the new song, The Legend of George Jones.
We need to tell the publisher, too, of the book.
Yeah, the publisher of the book is Heritage Builders.
Yeah.
Out of Clovis, California, and my publisher is Sherman Smith. He's a great guy. And if somebody wants the book, they can order it from Heritage Builders. It'll be released on April the 15th on the shelf at Walmart on April 15th.
And Books A Millions and Barnes and Noble.
Yeah, and it's a worldwide release, and it's on Amazon. You can order it there. But I guess the quickest way to get a book would be to order it, probably, if you wanted it now, would be from heritagebuilders.com, and you can get the book.
Heritage Builders, if you want to get it now. If not, you have to wait till tax day. They can get it kind of wide. It'll be everywhere on April 15th, and from Barnes & Noble to Amazon's and everywhere in between. So you can get a copy of that.
Brandon, you can download Legend of George Jones off iTunes also.
Well, Peanut, you're everywhere.
Well, you can preload that now, and so you can get The Legend of George Jones musically now off iTunes, and then get the book. You can pre-order that also.
Fantastic. So, well, God bless you guys. Thank you again for fitting this in your schedule, and wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, sir, and God bless you now.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.